Okay, good evening, everybody. Glad to see you. We're going to get started. So tonight we are beginning Unit 5 on post-emancipation. And this unit will be 2 sessions. We're going to begin it tonight, and we have 3 presenters for our background readings tonight. So we have Sharon and Phil Ross who are going to present, and we have Frank Abrams. So let's see. Sharon, do you want to come up first? All right. Yeah, microphone.
I should go over this way. Yeah, thank you. Okay.
Hold the microphone up here.
This is political and racial anti-Semitism.
Sorry, can you hold it close to you?
Like this?
Yeah.
The ideology of modern anti-Semitism rests on secular notions in contrast to the religious dogma of medieval Christianity. The rise of the modern democratic state called for the emancipation of the Jews, yet they were seen as a, quote, state within a state, and thus antithetical to national integration. Jews were often associated with the development of predatory capitalism. The modern state used anti-Semitism to fuel popular support for itself and to combat what was perceived as excessive Jewish influence on public life. The upheaval created by these new ways of life were often blamed on the Jews, who were seen as beneficiaries of these changes. To the forces of modernity conspired to, quote, subvert the idyllic world of the Gentiles, whether through capitalism or socialism. The Jews are now seen as a distinct race, their biology manifesting their evil ways. Education for their betterment was impossible, and the blood libel continued to be expounded. The title page of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion reads, quote, Gentiles, beware. The Jews are an alien bacillus that must be urgently contained and isolated.
Thank you. Nice job, Sharon. Thank you very much. Yeah. Oh, yes, please. Thank you very much. Okay, Frank, I think you're next.
20 pages, 21 pages into one. So here goes. As new forces of capitalism and nationalism arose in Europe in the early 19th century, a new, quote, emancipation ideology, unquote, arose in Germany. Jews would get equality in a constitutional state, but in turn they had to change some aspects of their religion. Be just a religion, not a nationality or a people. They had to purge Judaism of superstitions. This was the beginning of Reformed Judaism. In time, liberal parties became the majority in Germany. By 1871, Bismarck united Germany, and the Jews were happy to be Deutsche Staatsbürger jüdischer Glaubens, German citizens of the Jewish faith. But there had been and was opposition, especially among peasants and the lower middle class, who favored the old order of nobility and church. At the same time, others, non-religious romantic nationalists, posited a unique German Volksgeist, or spirit of the people. The Jews were seen as foreign to this, as an alien nation. To these romantic nationalists, Jews could not escape by conversion. They had inherent unchangeable characteristics which were irreconcilable with the German Geist. Things got worse after 1870. The Industrial Revolution, urbanization. Peasants and artisans became dislocated factory workers and blamed the Jews. The influential Professor Heinrich von Treitschke, considered a liberal, wanted a non-religious state, but assumed that there was a German nation which was Christian. Jews had civil rights, but weren't really German. The last straw was post-1870 science and pseudoscience. Darwinism became social Darwinism. In racial theory, Germans were Aryan and Jews were Semitic. A new term became popular, anti-Semitism, against the Semitic race. Jews as Semites had inherent racial traits. Conversion was not effective, assimilation was impossible. You will permit me a nice German couplet. Was der Jude glaubt, ist einerlei, in der Rasse liegt die Schweinerei. What the Jew believes doesn't matter. In the race is the swinishness. This is the antithesis of an emancipation ideology. Men are not equal. Race is all. Vermin must be removed or killed. Newspapers and beer hall speeches spread the word. After 1880, anti-Semitism became politicized and popularized and became a mass phenomenon. Respected politicians joined with anti-Semites for political gain. The die was cast.
Well done, Frank. That was a complicated article.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, nicely done. Phil, you're up. And Frank, do you have German? Like, do you? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, nicely done.
You knew I shouldn't have come after Frank. The article I read was on leftist Semitism in Europe. Karl Marx focused on a contemporary Jew rather than the religious Jew, and identified Jews and Judaism with all he hated in, I have to take my glasses off. All he hated in capitalism, ignoring the plight of impoverished Jewish workers in London, where he lived nearby, and the pogroms that swept through Russia in 1881. Jews were the filthiest of all races, according to Marx. My comment, to my mind, he was a self-hating Jew who had to prove to the world that he was not Jewish. The French socialists were more anti-Jewish than Marx. France was the cradle of socialism, where it developed a generation before it developed in Germany. Charles Fourier, one of the two founders of French socialism, considered Jews as parasites, merchants, usurers. Henri de Saint-Simon, the other founder, was sympathetic to Jews, acknowledging that the socialist mission was a form of messianism derived from the Jews. However, the Fourier socialism triumphed. The mythical worldview of Jewish world dominion was first introduced into the West's consciousness by French socialists in the 19th century. In journals of Pierre-Joseph Proudhon, one of the most important theorists of early socialism, there are Nazi-like sentiments and a program for the disappearance of Jewry by fire or fusion or by expulsion. Jews must disappear. The socialists expressed an indifference and a non-participation of the Dreyfus affair because he was a Jew. When some socialists did take a stand, they stated the Jewish aspect was irrelevant. An historian, a French historian, noted that between 1820 and 1920, he could not find a single word on behalf of the Jews in French socialist literature. Antisemitism, we now move to anti-Semitism in the Soviet Union. Zionism was considered counter-revolutionary. The campaign to destroy the Jewish religion eliminated 390 out of the 450 synagogues between 1956 and 1965. The concept of the God chosenness and ruling the world were taught to instill Jewish contempt to other peoples. I emphasize that Soviet anti-Semitism subsequently focused its attacks on Jewish nationalism. There was a denial of the Holocaust and claims that Zionists worked with the Nazis. In a book written by one, Yuri Ivanov, he described Zionism as an offshoot of Nazism. Anti-Semitism persisted in Eastern Europe. In 1950, and I didn't know this, 13 leaders of the Czech Communist Party were accused of being Zionist agents and were hung. 10 were Jewish. In 1953, Stalin alleged that a group of doctors, mostly Jewish, were plotting to poison the Soviet leadership and intended to expel the Jews to Siberia, all the Jews to Siberia. Stalin died before the trial. Maybe the doctors got him, I don't know. The most serious anti-Semitic act was the resolution in the UN declaring Zionism as racism. Western leftists. One theme is the denial of Jewish nationhood and a constant accusation of Jewish genocide committed by Israel. A number of Protestant groups were proponents of recognizing the PLO, even though the PLO was committed to the destruction of Israel and was the world supporter of terrorism. Stokely Carmichael declared he never admired a white man, but the greatest one was Hitler.
Thank you, Phil. Okay, very nicely done on the part of our three presenters. Thank you all. I have their summaries here, and Judy will send them out so that you can all add them to your binders. So we're moving along closer and closer to our own time. We're in the latter part of the 19th century now in Germany, where and some France too, we're going to look at tonight. And as our presenters demonstrated, we see that in this period, anti-Semitism shifts from attitudes against Jews shift in this period from anti-Judaism, meaning a religious phenomenon, which we had seen, in earlier times. The critiques primarily against Jewish beliefs, Jewish religious practices, Jewish religion generally, and shifts into the realm of the secular and the political, and Jews are caught in the middle between Enlightenment rationalists and socialists on the left, and Romanticist, nationalists, racists on the right. And each camp, has its various iterations of anti-Semitism. I want to make sure that we kind of have a sense before we start our readers, like, what are the key issues that are at work in this period? Adam.
That Jews are not just a religion, they're actually a race with certain characteristics that are immutable, and that regardless of what you do, you can't make a Jew not a Jew.
Okay, good. All right, so that's a couple things. One is the question of what is Judaism? Is Judaism a religion? Is it a nationality? Is it a race? Is it some combination of all of them? And how does that definition of Judaism impact on a Jew's ability to escape his or her Jewishness? In earlier times, you know, in Christendom and in the Muslim world and the pagan, etc., Jews always had an out from their persecuted status by converting to whatever the dominant religion might be. Of course, in the last week's class, or in 2 weeks ago, when we learned about the French Revolution, and then into Marx and the German philosophers in the first half of the 19th century, we saw that Jews had an out by conversion to Enlightenment rationalism, conversion to socialism, whatever the case may be, abandoning Judaism, and they would no longer be a Jew. But if Judaism is defined as a race, which we find in this period, as Adam rightly points out, there's no out. A person cannot change their race. And as Frank quoted in the German, it doesn't matter what the Jew believes, because the swinishness of the Jew is inherent in his or her racial biological character. Okay, so what else? What other issues are at work? David.
Both in France, in Germany, Northern Europe, there's a general movement from an agrarian society to an industrial society, and which dramatically affects the peasant class and the lower middle class, working class, combined with, certainly in Germany, the diminution of the nobility and ruling classes that lost their governing power, but retained, many of their cultural powers.
Okay. Yeah, good. So cultural change, economic change, political change, all of these things create the environment in which this anti-Semitism takes root and grows. I think, Jerry, did you want to say something?
I guess also whether a Jew could be loyal to a country they were in, as opposed to being loyal to.
Yeah. Yes, this question of Jewish loyalty, and that's tied up with the issue of what is Judaism, and up until the Enlightenment period, Judaism has been thought of as a nation. The Jews have been thought of as a nation. So, of course, we saw with Napoleon and such, the question of whether are Jews a nation within the nation? Are they loyal to the nation amongst whom they reside, or is their loyalty somewhere else, which has political bearings? Of course. Yeah, Phil.
The word Zionism always, to my mind, reinforces nation.
For sure, yeah.
And almost aggravates anti-Semitism.
Okay, yeah. So, and we're gonna have a guest speaker from the ADL come to speak to us about Zionism. But you're right. The Zionist movement, which really kind of comes into its own in the late 19th century, is a Jewish nationalist movement, which claims that the Jews as a nation require a homeland, a sovereign state, like other nations of the world. And that does create a split, certainly within the Jewish community, because Frank's presentation, it was talking about that the Enlightenment ideology that our author Sanford Reagan writes about, the Enlightenment ideology in 19th century Germany sought to embrace Germanness, on the part of the Jews. Jews to say, we're Germans who believe in the religion of Judaism. That is to define Judaism as a religion, not as a nation. And there's a big split within within the Jewish kind of world over this. Zionism / nationalism, versus Judaism as religion only. And that manifests in classical Reform Judaism in America, which takes the position of Judaism as a religion. And the founders of classical Reform in America say, we no longer consider ourselves a nation and do not seek return to Palestine. That was the work of one faction of Judaism, and German Judaism and subsequently American Judaism, but certainly not the only faction. Okay, Arlene?
It just struck me reading these, how each one builds over the course of this class, each sort of thing built on the next thing.
Yeah.
First, it was our religion that we were, that was no good. And then it was because we considered ourselves to be other, and maybe a nation, and now that was no good. And now they're gonna consider us a race, which also is no good. And all of it sort of building each trope till in some ways that I read this about the Jews taking over the world. All of a sudden now where we are today, that the Jews control the banks, the Jews control everything. So all of these built, and the divide was tighter and tighter, where the Jews, as you said, at one point had an escape route. They could convert, whether overtly or overtly only, but now already we're stuck.
Yeah.
It's
true. Everything does build on something, and in contemporary events, and I circulated a podcast and an article, this week, and I posted something else that came up on my Facebook after Julie sent that email out. But I don't know if you guys saw it, this demonstration that was staged in Union Station in Washington, D.C. Did you see this? Let me just pull it up and I'll share it on the screen so that you can see it. It's disgusting and unbelievable, but then in light of what we've been studying.
Did they take it down?
I don't know. Let's see. So I just want to look at it. This was earlier this week. Okay, so I just want to show this picture. It's really it's unreal. That people do. Of course, people do this stuff for shock value, I'm assuming, but like that, Okay, so look at this. This is in Washington, D.C. At the Union Station.
Now, are these live people wearing masks? Or
Yeah. But these are people. This is just a picture of it. But these are people wearing masks. Obviously Netanyahu, I think Trump, and I don't know, and Biden. Anyway, and look here, Netanyahu and the stuff, and the it says they're eating. It says illegally harvested
organs.
Skin. Yeah. And Gaza baby. Yeah, and they had this display of a menu. Wait, hold on. I'm gonna go to my Facebook page because you can see it better. Let me just see if I can get there easily. Not making me log in and everything. Okay, so let me go to my page. Yeah, there's that, and then you get. Okay, so if we go down. Okay, right here. Okay, can you guys see this online?
Yes, we see it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you see, this is the demonstration on the menu here. Let's see if we can make it bigger. Anyway, I don't know, it's a little hard to read now, but you can look at it online. They're setting up this table, like this banquet, where they're just dressed as, it's Netanyahu and whomever his cronies, eating limbs of, you see over here on the bottom left, like eating limbs. There's another picture of them holding it looks like probably like pasta or something, but it's made to look like they're holding brains or organs or something. And the menu describes all of it, it's like they're eating human beings. And of course, it's a critique of Israel, and the Gaza war. I mean, and this is just the blood libel, like just straight in your face. This is the most explicit demonstration of the blood libel I've ever seen.
It says the tablecloth is a blood spattered Israeli flag.
Oh, the table, yeah,
Where was it displayed?
in Washington DC at Union Station.
Didn't anyone protest it?
I'm sure they did, but they got pictures. I don't know how long it lasted. Okay, so look, it says here, okay, so also so here it says, performers wearing the masks of prominent leaders, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and US President Donald Trump, are seen in a video of the display drinking mock blood from wine glasses at a table covered with a blood-spattered Israeli flag. Also on the table are fake bloody limbs and fake organ meat. The performers, their hands stained red, wipe the blood off their faces with Israeli flags. The characters playing Netanyahu and former US President Joe Biden pull apart a heap of bloody entrails. An oversized menu that's placed next to the table is titled Israel's Friendsgiving Dinner. And its offerings include Gaza children's limbs, stolen organs, illegally harvested skin, and for a drink, Gaza's spilled blood. The bottom of the menu is signed with a heart next to Netanyahu's name. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't know who did this. But look, just for the purposes of our class, this is we now understand where this comes from. And you can see it as an adaptation of an age-old trope, of a blood libel against Jews. And now it's transferred and applied to the state of Israel. Now we heard also, I don't know, like in the podcast I sent out, they were talking about this controversy has been going on with this guy Nick Fuentes, who, and they were playing some clips from his interview where he talks about Jews as he draws on the Jews as a nation within the nation. It's like the Jews have their own place or whatever, they have their own country, and they don't belong here. So here what we see, I mean, it's a similar situation as what was going on in 19th century Germany, which is the Jews are squeezed. They're on the right, you have the claims that the Jews as a nation do not belong here. They are other, and not part of our, kind of nativist culture. They're aliens to it. They don't belong here. On the left, you have the claim that the Jews are not really a nation, they're a fake people or whatever, and they don't belong in the land of Israel. So taken together, the sum of the parts is that the Jews belong nowhere. And thus, that of course harkens back to the figurine that I showed you last time of Ahasuerus, the wandering Jew. He has no home, belongs nowhere, is condemned to wander the globe forever. Okay, so all of this ties back to everything that we have been learning. And it's very real in our time. Okay, so I want to get, now I handed out to you this chart that I created with Gemini AI.
Okay,
So amazingly cool.
one
So
moment.
looking
We got one hand up on Zoom. Dr. Karen's had her hand up for a
yeah,
while.
you have a question? Karen?
Thank you. Yes. I just wanted to reference, can you, if you haven't seen it, it's gotta be somewhere available, a film, could be at least 20 years old, called Sunshine. Ralph Fiennes starred in it. And it's originally the family name was Sonnenschein in 19th century, the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And they follow them through like 4 different generations, including the attempt of one of the patriarchs to convert his Jewish family to Protestantism to survive and succeed in the Austro-Hungarian society. Unto one of the sons who enters the army and rises in the ranks, but ultimately is murdered for sticking to being a Jew. You can't be both a Jew and an Austro-Hungarian officer. It's a devastating, brilliant film, but it really, all the quandaries and then no exits for the Jews trapped in this dilemma. Yeah, existential dilemma. It's a brilliant film.
Yes. Thank you for the recommendation, Karen. So what we have here on this chart, I used Gemini to create this easy to reference chart about our various German anti-Semitic thinkers that we're studying. We read last week, we looked at Bauer, Marx, and Wagner. And tonight we are going to look at von Düring, Marr, Stecker, von Treitschke, and Fritsch. And this is just a little reference sheet for you. And so, Judy will send that, email that to those of you, so that those of you who participate online can have it. All right, so let's go to.
It is in the docs binder on in the OneDrive folder already.
Thanks, Dory. Okay, so let's start. Let's start with the handout in the first one behind the green page in Unit 5. The front page says Wilhelm Marr, The Victory of Judaism over Germany, 1879. Yes.
You were gonna tell us how you made this, I'm looking, what?
Oh, yeah, how did I make it? Okay, so what I did was, I have a whole bunch of notes from my own studies and readings on these various thinkers, so I uploaded it to Gemini, and I asked it to, based on its own kind of research or whatever it does, and my notes to synthesize, each of these anti-Semitic writers, into a chart to hand out for an adult learning class. And this is what it gave me. So pretty cool, to organize by theme is what I asked it. So it's incredible. And it did it in like 5 seconds. So it really is incredible what it can do. So you have that handy. All right, so let's start with Wilhelm Marr, The Victory of Judaism over Germany. Now, Marr, as your cheat sheet will show you. Okay, so Marr is 1879. He is just the summation in one sentence of his argument is anti-Semitism is racial secular. Jews are an alien, hostile race that has already conquered Germany. And he coined the term anti-Semitism. And so, and it's important to note, I think, as one of our presenters said, I think Phil, that anti-Semitism is, although we use it in general terms, or general sense, colloquially, to mean against Jews, anti-Semitism, as it was first articulated as a term, was a racial statement. And anti-Semitism as opposed to anti-Judaism. Okay, that the Jew is a Semite, and that's a racial category, like the German is an Aryan, the Jew is a Semite. So anti-Semitism casts Jews as a race as opposed to as a religion. So it's interesting, given that history, that the term, the general term that we use today to speak about opposition to Jews is anti-Semitism instead of anti-Judaism or something else. So Marr is the one who coined the term. And over in the far right column, in terms of our thematic progression, the critical public shift here is he popularized the racial element and created a political organization to combat the perceived Jewish victory. Okay, so here in Marr's efforts, they establish in Germany political parties that overtly are based on anti-Semitism. The Anti-Semites League, I think he established the Anti-Semitism League. Okay, so this was out there in your face in this time. All right, so let's read from Marr's essay, The Victory of Judaism over Germany. There is no stopping it. Are there no clear signs that the twilight of the Jews is setting in? No. Jewry's control of society and politics, as well as its practical domination of religious and ecclesiastical thought, is still in the prime of its development, heading toward the realization of Jehovah's promise, I will hand all peoples over to thee. By now, a sudden reversal of this process is fundamentally impossible, for if it were, the entire social structure, which has been so thoroughly Judaized, would collapse. And there is no viable alternative to this social structure which could take its place. Further, we cannot count on the help of the, quote, Christian state. The Jews are the, quote, best citizens of this modern Christian state, as it is in perfect harmony with their interests. It is not a pretentious prophecy, but the deepest inner conviction which I hear uttered. Your generation will not pass before there will be absolutely no public office, even the highest one, which the Jews will not have usurped.
Yes.
Yes, through the Jewish nation, Germany will become a world power, a Western New Palestine. And this will happen not through violent revolutions, but through the compliance of the people. We should not reproach the Jewish nation. It fought against the Western world for 1800 years and finally conquered and subjugated it. We were vanquished, and it is entirely proper that the victor shouts, I don't know how to pronounce that, Vae victus. German culture has proved itself ineffective and powerless against this foreign power. This is a fact, a brute and inexorable fact. State, church, Catholicism, Protestantism, creed, and dogma, all are brought low before the Jewish tribunal. That is the irreverent daily press, which the Jews control. The Jews were late in their assault on Germany, but once they started, there was no stopping. Gambetta, Simon, and Crémieux were the dictators of France in 1870-71. During the war, they drove thousands upon thousands of Frenchmen to their senseless deaths. And the notes indicate that Marr thought that these men were Jews, although they weren't, or not all of them were in any case. After Sedan, the whole world believed in peace, but no, Bismarck was lured by the rhetoric of a Jules Favre. Blood and iron had to continue because of the frivolous, worthless, fanatical action of the Semites in Tours. Poor Judaized France. In England, the Semite Disraeli, a German hater, holds in his vest pocket the key to war and peace in the Orient. Who derived the real benefit at the Congress of Berlin from the spilled blood of the Orient? Jewry. The Alliance Israelite Universale was the first in line. Romania was forced to open officially its doors and gates to destructive Semitism. Jewry did not yet dare to make the same demand of Russia, but this demand too will soon come. Dear reader, while you are allowing the German to be skinned alive, I bow my head in admiration and amazement before this Semitic people, which has us under heel. Resigned to subjugation to Jewry, I am marshaling my last remaining strength in order to die peacefully as one who will not surrender and who will not ask forgiveness. Can we deny this historical fact? No. The historical fact that Israel became the leading social political superpower in the 19th century lies before us. And just note this, first of all, there is no state of Israel at this time. So when he's talking about Israel, he's talking about the Jewish people who, have no state. But he's describing here as the leading social political superpower in the 19th century. It is already notorious to what extent we lack the physical and intellectual strength to de-Judaize ourselves. The raw, brutal, but completely unconscious protest against the real Judaization of society was social democracy. It sided, however, with the Jews because Jewry has also infiltrated its ranks. After all, the founder of German social democracy, Lassalle, was a Semite. Why are we so surprised? We have among us a flexible, tenacious, intelligent, foreign tribe that knows how to bring abstract reality into play in many different ways. Not individual Jews, but the Jewish spirit and Jewish consciousness have overpowered the world. All of this is the consequence of a cultural history so unique in its way, so grand that everyday polemics can achieve nothing against it. With the entire force of its armies, the proud Roman Empire did not achieve that which Semitism has achieved in the West, and particularly in Germany. Okay. Well, it makes us seem very powerful. Okay, so let's, I'm interested if you, I want to ask, here's the question that I want to ask. Let's highlight what are some key words or phrases or themes that you notice in this essay?
The Jews are powerful and are consoling us.
Okay, yeah, Jews are powerful and controlling, yeah.
Foreign.
Foreign, foreign, definitely. Yeah, Dorothy,
They have the media.
what's
They
that?
have the media.
Oh, the Jews control the press. Yeah,
Flexible, tenacious, intelligent.
flexible, tenacious, intelligent.
Because all those, the thing is that all of those things are true. And they take what's true about Jews and then distort it.
Okay, yeah, so like Len said, like that you could, I mean, tongue in cheek, but some of the things that the guy says could also, in a different context, be perceived as philo-Semitic, loving of Jews. Like they're flexible, they're tenacious, they're intelligent. Like those could be compliments, but he presents it as negative qualities, right? That the Jews are they're manipulative, right? And he notes that look, they have manipulated all the powers. They've manipulated the different political parties. They've manipulated the rulers. All of these kinds of things. Yeah, Lynn.
Okay, he sort of presents the whole thing as a kind of, it anticipates this, but the lost cause. This idea that that Germany is undone.
Yeah,
Germany will be Judaized, the world will be Judaized, but you know, I will not give an inch, I will stand here unapologetically.
yeah,
You know, so
Yeah.
it's kind of like, you know, it's, there's ambivalence, it's like he clearly admires this conquering force. But at the same time, you know, the nobility of the underdog to be one principled stand.
yeah, you're gonna make the last stand, and I think the connection with the lost cause is an interesting one. I wonder, you know, if there's any kind of philosophical or historical lineage to that, but in any case, you know, the lost cause of the South and the Civil War, you know, kind of saw the Yankees, you know, as coming in and destroying, you know, Southern culture and, you know, all of this. And I think Mar is saying the same thing, that the Jews have taken over and they're destroying everything that's German about Germany. And it's a lost cause, but I'm making the final stand, and he's implicitly calling on everybody who cares about this to join him in his last stand, which of course invites like a very aggressive and radical politics. You know, Ellen.
The last paragraph, where he says, the consequence of a cultural history compares, they're even better than the Roman Empire with
Yeah.
all their force of their army. How, is he delusional? I mean, it's like.
Yeah, I mean, I think he is delusional.
What percentage of Germany was Jewish? Couldn't have been huge.
It's very small. I mean, probably bigger than it is now because, you know, but relatively, you know, small. And even apart from whatever population percentage they represent, which is surely very small, you could, you know, look it up or ask, you know, AI, what was the percentage of Jews in Germany at this time? But he's describing the Jews as this international world power, mightier than the Roman army. I mean, and not only is there no Jewish country, I mean, there's no state, there's no IDF, there's no, I mean, and here, this is totally delusion in the buildup and characterization of Jews in this time. And yet, it caught on. I mean, this is the stuff that lays the groundwork for Nazism. Arlene.
But, you know, here we are today, and you hear the same thing, many arguments, how much of the population of anywhere are Jews?
Yeah.
Like, nothing, like a speck on the, you know, not even on the, filling in on the graph. So, you know, it's the same story, like attributing the power to us, where we have negligible power.
Yeah.
It's imaginary power.
Right. Now, one thing that we know, for instance, it's truth in the United States that whatever we as Jews are, like 1% of the population or something like that, right? Give or take. In terms of you know, political office holding, in, you know, in the Congress, we have more representation in the United States Congress than our percentage in the population, right? So, and I think that in various times and places in Europe, a similar kind of phenomenon was observed where, you know, Jews seem to be in positions that like are overrepresent their presence in the society. And so, you know, this attitude must grow out of that, right? That like there's barely any Jews, and yet they're in government and they're in journalists and all this kind of thing. So again, there's like some kernel that they're building in.
The Nobel Prizes.
The Nobel Prizes, I mean, whatever, things, yeah. So I think there's some sense of that. And look, I mean, one of the conversations that has been ongoing in the United States for the last, I don't know, decade or so, you know, is this the conversation about equity. And it's a problematic one for Jews, precisely because we are overrepresented in lots of things. And on the topic of equity, the argument can be like, that's not fair. Why are Jews overrepresented? Equity is about everybody having like an equal or proportional share. We are definitely overrepresented. Okay, so you know certain things that may be realities can be then taken and just blown up into some crazy ideas. Here, Ed.
I just looked up on Perplexity, and in
Uh-huh.
1879, Jews in Germany were 1.25%.
Okay, yeah. So probably overrepresentation. Adam.
The interesting thing here is that if you believe all this stuff, the only solution is the final solution.
Well, specifically to racial, to racial anti-Semitism. That's exactly right.
Either them or us.
Yeah, and so you have so yes, what's being developed here through these writers that we're reading now is the casting of Jews as a race, meaning a biological type, I guess, meaning something that's immutable. A person cannot change their race. They can change their religious beliefs, they can change their political beliefs, but they cannot change their biology. So we're seeing a shift away from Judaism as changeable to Judaism as unchangeable. And then along with that, we're seeing the development of the character of the race as destructive, parasitic, harmful to the people and the culture and the polity in which it dwells. And it's like, somebody read, maybe it was Phil, one of the quotes in his that he read was describing the Jews as a bacillus. And you find that in Nazi propaganda a lot, that Jews are like a foreign biological thing, like a coronavirus. Remember during COVID you had like the picture of the virus cell or whatever on the covers of the magazines and whatnot, that like Jews are cast in that term, that Jews are a biological force that's infecting the culture, the polity, the people. David.
Isn't Mars or the audience that he wants to hear him the class of the political class that has liberalized Germany to allow Jews to gain citizenship and rights, etc. So
Definitely.
he is, and the other anti-Semitic parties that are like him are focused on saying, what are you doing to Bismarck and other center-right or even liberal German political parties?
Right. Yeah, that from his standpoint, emancipation and kind of liberal political values wipe out the defenses of the people, the nation, the culture, against this infectious, bacterium that will destroy it.
And don't you hear the same thing now in certain right-wing American?
For sure, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah, this stuff is
Infection of the white, anti-white Christian
Right.
male culture.
Yeah, right. These ideas they have permutations that show up in different contexts, and places. But see the Mar and
and these other thinkers that are on this chart represent well, not all of them, like Marx and Bauer were kind of Enlightenment, style thinkers and advocating for universalism, but the rest of them are reactions against universalism, against the Enlightenment rationalism, which held that all human beings are, the same. And to the Jews as a nation, nothing; to the Jews as individuals, everything. That there's equal rights to everybody. Liberalization, democracy, what you name it, opens the door for this nefarious influence to take root and gain power in the culture. That's what they're reacting against. Okay, Pat, and then I want to read more.
The assumption is everything is biological rather than cultural. And
The racial theory.
yeah, the racial rather than the cultural.
Uh-huh.
And that's a question of what is it about our culture that puts us in these positions?
Well, I don't understand the connection.
The connection is, there's jealousy,
Uh-huh.
but it's assumed that the jealousy comes from something biological rather than something that's positive culturally that allows it to happen. I see the biology and the culture very differently.
Yeah, they are different. They are. The racial anti-Semitism.
They ignore the cultural.
Yeah, I mean they do, but the race, as we'll see, the racial anti-Semites claim that Jewishness as a biological category carries with it certain qualities. Okay, that are drawn actually from earlier forms of anti-Semitism, which were religious in nature. Remember, the Gospel of John described Jews as the sons of the devil. So the idea of Jews as a demonic force had, arose in an anti-religious Jewish religion context, but it's transferred into this racial context where now it's demonicness is a racial feature of Jews, meaning there's nothing they can do about it. It's part of the racial, character of it. Okay, so let's see how that gets developed. We're going to read the next one. Carl Eugen Düring. The question of the Jew is a question of race. A Jewish question would still exist even if every Jew were to turn his back on his religion and join one of our major churches. There you go, right there. Okay. Yes, I maintain that in this case, the struggle between us and the Jews would make itself felt as ever more urgent, although the struggle certainly is felt now, even when the Jews have yet to convert in large numbers. It is precisely the baptized Jews who infiltrate furthest, unhindered in all sectors of society and political life. Okay, so this is here we have the idea when Jews are seen as a race, that is a bacterium that's put that infiltration or infection of the body, the national body, is made easier when the Jew is disguised. And that's where, what David is saying, is the problem for these anti-Semites with enlightenment and values and emancipation is that it enables Jews to come in to the society and blend in. So for the Jews, the Reformed Jews who say we renounce Jewish nationalism, and we're Germans who just believe in the Jewish religion, and we dress like Germans, and we, our manners are like Germans, and you can't tell assimilation for these racialists is the worst, because then they can't even defend themselves. You don't even know who a Jew is. Right? So they want they want Jews to be separate and identifiable. This is where, in the Nazi period, of course, Jews have to wear the badges and all of these things. It's not just for shame and humiliation, which of course it is, but it's also to identify Jews so that Germans know not to intermix with them, because they're poison. They will infect them. Okay? All right, so let's keep reading. It is as though they have provided themselves with an unrestricted passport. These are Jews who convert to Christianity. Advancing their stock to those places where members of the Jewish religion are unable to follow. See, if we have law, we might have laws on the books or restrictions on the books that Jews can't go here, or Jews can't do this. But if they convert to Christianity here, to this point, okay, then they're part of the majority. But the racialists saying, no, that's terrible, because they might have converted their religious beliefs, but biologically they're still Jews, and it doesn't matter. All right, we're going to read more, and we'll take comments. Furthermore, several doors are closed to members of the Jewish religion by our legislation, and more particularly by the principles of our administration. Through these portals, the racial Jew who has forsaken his religion can enter unhindered. A situation similar to the one involving the baptized Jews results as soon as all civic rights and opportunities become available to members of the Jewish religion. Thereupon, they force themselves into all aspects of social and political life, just like those who have converted to Christianity. And in this way, their contact with the nation in which they live becomes more pronounced. This takes place despite the fact that in society, as opposed to the state, there is never an instance in which the members of the Jewish religion are made completely equal. So the state might make them equal, but in social life, people, use social barriers or whatever to keep away from them. I return, therefore, to the hypothesis that the Jews are to be defined solely on the basis of race and not on the basis of religion. I dismiss all conclusions hitherto upheld. The Mosaic attempt to locate within the base of our people a Jewish component only makes the Jewish question a more burning issue. The diverse admixture of our modern cultures, or in other words, the sprinkling of racial Jewry in the cracks and crevices of our national abode, must inevitably lead to a reaction. I mean, this is very biological language. Think about, your body gets infected by a virus, and then it triggers an immune reaction to rid itself of the virus. This is the kind of language that they're speaking in, right? The penetration of the Jewry will inevitably lead to a reaction. It is impossible that close contact between Germans and Jews will take effect without the concomitant realization that this infusion of Jewish qualities is incompatible with our best impulses. Okay, so let's see, Lynn, did you have your hand?
Yeah, so going back all the way to our class, we were looking at the things that pre-Christians thought were hateful about Jews. And some of those tropes were clannishness and, insularity and all that stuff. And now we look here, and precisely the opposite things are being used against the Jews, right? They're assimilation, but really not really, right?
Yeah.
They're spreading throughout the body politic like a cancer of bacillus.
Yeah.
It makes me, it just lends more support to, I think, Sartre's.
Yeah.
You're damned if you do, be damned if you don't.
Right.
You know, it's just endemic Jupiter.
Exactly, right? So it's like, earlier Jesus said, like, Jews just need to get, abandon Judaism, convert to Christianity, become like the rest of us, and all will be good. And here, they're vilified for assimilating, for doing these things. So you're right. It's Jews are just damned in whatever we do. I mean, this is just the history of it. Dorothy.
Yeah, so we come back to this question of what is the nugget? What is the nugget that really stimulates this metamorphosis of hatred
Yeah.
from one place to another for different reasons, but with the same concept? We don't like them. We don't want them.
Yeah.
We can't let them replace us. Isn't that the statement?
Yeah.
They will not replace us.
Right.
I keep getting the feeling that they have a disease. Not that we do.
That the anti-Semitism, that's like Sartre, so they essentially have like a mental disease. Yeah.
We're different in all these different places, and yet we're similarly hated.
Right.
Jealousy of the Jewish ambition.
Yeah, jealousy. Yeah, I mean, yes, Adam.
It's also reminiscent of the Inquisition in Spain. That basically they didn't go against Jews, they went against conversos.
Right. Yes. The conversos, to make sure that they weren't like still faithful to Judaism. Before this, so that was an enforcement of church, the church power. So what causes all of this in this period of time? So we highlighted economic factors, cultural factors, political factors. You cannot separate out any of that stuff. On the political front, the Enlightenment, the breakdown of traditional society, the advancement of universalism, the idea of universal rights, and rationalism, which is accessible to everyone. Despite any kind of difference. It's the idea of the Enlightenment is the great kind of equalizer, in the sense that all humanity is the same. In Germany here, in the 19th century, there is a strong reaction against the Enlightenment. Because these values of the Enlightenment, which by and large, I think, we as 21st century Reformed Jews generally embrace, like the values of the Enlightenment, and the United States of America, generally speaking, as a country, is founded on the principles of the Enlightenment. But there is a very strong reaction against the Enlightenment, because many people see this kind of emphasis on universalism and the obliteration of difference as destructive of their particular identities as German. The beauty and the sublime quality of the German people, and all that the German people have contributed to the world. German culture, German creativity and art and ideas, all of these things in the mind of the anti-Enlightenment, Enlightenment people, which this movement is called romanticism, like kind of romanticizing, the particularity of the folk, the German people, and emphasizing intellectualism and reason over emotion and deep connection to land and nature and all of these things that the romanticists see as like true life, real life. They see the Enlightenment as like an abstraction, an alienation of stuff that's real. And the Jews represent all that. Remember, the Jews are poor, and they're not part of our people. They're not part of our culture. They don't understand it. And they're this like formless abstraction that are now, the gates have been opened to let them in and just destroy everything that's dear about Germanness. Okay, so this gives rise to these ideas. How these philosophers are coming to explain like what's going on here, what's going on with what we're feeling, and it's not just about religious belief. It's about something more, something deeper that makes this Jew is like so other from us. And then at the same time, there's broader kind of intellectual currents of pseudoscience, like racial science. It's not only being applied to Jews. But racial science is like this in this new age of science that people try to kind of use the methodologies of science to prove racial differences.
That started in the United States, by the way, that's.
Yeah, okay, yeah, so this is coming into play. So all of these things are, plus what they inherit from Christian anti-Semitism. All of these motifs that we know. Jews as demons, as, Christ killers, as, blood libel perpetrators, all of these kinds of things. And it all comes into a toxic brew that results in this. Ellen.
I'm thinking more that the results of the period of time are more or less physical results, like economic changes, education, but the feelings are pervasive in every period, and their emotions. And I think a lot of this is, he's talking about fear and being left out and or left behind, just like we saw in Charlottesville. That's what they were saying.
Yeah.
Jealousy definitely comes into this, rage.
For sure.
And perhaps the people that were the most vulnerable were the peasants, who kind of just had to be swept up with the tide, and this was the next step.
Mm-hmm.
They had no real power.
Right. Yeah, but it's not only the peasantry. So like Wagner, this romanticist movement is has a lot to do with high culture and such, that is seen as is uniquely German. The kind, and remember, then you have the image of the wandering Jew, the Jews really belong nowhere. They're not rooted in anything. They just kind of wander the globe, and here they are now in our place, and they're undermining the everything that we are. So it becomes expressed through this concept of race. All right, so let's turn to the next one. This is French, Drumont. I don't want to read the whole thing, but I highlighted a few things for myself, and I'll just direct your attention there. First of all, just the first sentence, he says, the Jews possess half of the capital in the world. Okay, again, the idea of overrepresentation, extrapolated and magnified a gazillion fold. Now, if you look into the bottom paragraph on the left side, the one that starts with actually, actually the transfer of property. So he's arguing for taking away Jews' stuff and giving it to French people. Actually, the transfer of property, which we propose, is more legitimate than that which occurred during the revolution. In effect, no one could seriously deny that Jewish wealth has, as we have said, a special character. It is essentially parasitical and usurious. It is not the carefully husbanded fruit of the labor of innumerable generations. Rather, it is the result of speculation and fraud. It is not created by labor, but extracted with marvelous cleverness from the pocket of real workers by financial institutions, which have enriched their founders by ruining their stockholders. Okay, so here, of course, we see this trope of the Jews as wealthy and greedy and everything. But what else? Look a little closer. Let's see what else we can extract from this accusation here. Michael.
Well, they're accusing them of founding capitalism.
Right.
This is the accusation.
Yeah, yeah. Marx said it, yeah.
Capitalism, that the capitalists deny the workers the fruits of their labor.
Right. So Marx, right. So Marx, a big concept in Marx is alienation of labor from the human being. That like through the capitalist system, the labor that a person puts into the world is like stolen from him, you know, alienated from him. And yes, so here this is definitely, you know, this is Marxian.
I mean,
this idea.
the description of capitalism is almost like the description of the Jews.
Yeah, well, remember, Marx did that explicitly in his essay where he used Jew as like a stand-in for capitalists, right? And said this is the character of Judaism. But what else is he saying about Jewish wealth and the nature of Jews here as compared to Frenchmen? Yeah.
Like the French built up their wealth over generations and
Uh-huh.
time, the Jews came in and just quickly made money and.
Okay, so that's a contrast. The like, we've been here a really long time. We're like, you know, we belong in this place. And the Jew is an invading foreigner that just is getting rich off of us. Okay, Ivan.
The Jew didn't work for their money.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't created by their labor.
Right.
So therefore, you should be able to take it away from them.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And notice his use of the language. Okay, so the Jews' wealth is not created by labor, but extracted with marvelous cleverness. So we saw that in Mar too, like this, the Jews as really smart and whatever, from the pocket of real workers by financial institutions. There's a contrast being drawn. Lynn, you're nodding your head. What do you see?
Yeah, because it's not just speculation without victims.
Uh-huh.
It's speculation that explicitly victimizes the good workers, right? By manipulating markets or I don't know, war speculation, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's building profit off of the backs of the exploited.
Right. Yeah, it reminds me of like, remember the movie Wall Street with Gordon Gekko? You know, and he says in one of his scenes, he says like, I build nothing, I own. You know, it's like, that to me is what I see in here. He's Gekko, the picture of Gordon Gekko in that movie is like, he's like a parasite on the country. You know, he's just doing these paper transactions and stuff that can contribute nothing to the life of the country, but just fills his pockets.
It doesn't contribute to real productivity.
Nothing to real productivity. There's nothing tangible. There's nothing substantive about it. Yeah, Dorothy.
As a result, if you go down to the next paragraph, it unleashes the legitimacy. 500 determined men in the suburbs of Paris and a regiment surrounding the Jewish banks would suffice to carry out the most fruitful revolution of modern times. In other words, that would be justified.
Yeah.
Violence against them would be justified.
Yeah, and when you read this stuff, I mean, just think about these different, you know, tropes and motifs and stuff that are floating out there and how they're present in our world. And it's almost like there's just this ticking time bomb. It's very, you know, I mean, and it's on all sides. That's the thing. It's like I mean, this is like an Occupy Wall Street kind of, I mean, like there's, you know, the Jews, and this is like the story, the Jews are just squeezed, like we're accused of being capitalists, accused of being communists, you know, accused of, you know, not assimilating, accused of assimilating. I mean, it's just, there's a constant squeezing. Lori.
Yeah, this French guy is bringing up the French Revolution and basically saying, we've done it before, we've equalized the wealth, we can do it again, and this is a cleaner way of doing it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's turn. Now, then it's the next page in the notes. I highlighted something I think it's worth reading. At the very bottom of the first, on the left side column under the notes on Drumont. He's a journalist and leader of the anti-Semitic movement in France. In the very bottom of the paragraph, last sentence. It's at the very bottom of the column, sorry. Last sentence says, in contradistinction to the Frenchman. So this is like a summary of Drumont's ideas. In contradistinction to the Frenchman, the Jew lacks a creative impulse, and he is correspondingly ugly. A hooked nose, contorted fingers, an unpleasant body odor. The Jews, moreover, are by nature spies, traitors, criminals, and carriers of disease. Through their cunning, the Jewish race has all but subjugated the benign but careless Aryans of France. The major theme of Drumont's anti-Semitic canard, however, is the contrast between the poverty of the French workers and peasants and the wealth of Jewish bankers and industrialists. Okay. So again, this stuff is like, it's like a powder keg in the United States. I mean, it's very just scary. Okay, now let's look at the next one. Adolf Stecker, what we demand of modern Jewry. So let's see, Stecker was is described here as a conservative court preacher. Stecker expertly merged religious prejudice with political activism, using anti-Semitism to mobilize the lower middle class by blaming Jews for economic woes and the corrosive influence of liberal modernity. He founded the Christian Social Party, successfully turning anti-Jewish sentiment into a potent vote-winning platform in the 1880s. Okay, so we do not believe the end of the German spirit to be so near. Okay, so it's not like he's maybe reacting to Marr, who says like, we're done, we're cooked because of the Jews. And now Stecker's saying, we do not believe the end of the German spirit to be so near. Peoples, as well as individuals, can be reborn. Germany and Berlin too will recover and rid themselves of the foreign spirit. But there are symptoms of the presence of a disease. Our national body is plagued by social abuses, and social hostility never exists without reason. Now, to turn, I'm just going to read some highlights. Turn to the next page. First full paragraph. I do indeed consider modern Jewry a great danger to German national life. By this I mean neither the religion of the Orthodox nor the enlightenment of the Reformed. Orthodox Judaism, this ossification of the law, the Old Testament without a temple, without priests, without sacrifice, without a Messiah, is neither attractive nor dangerous to the children of the 19th century. It is a form of religion which is dead at its very core, a low form of revelation, an outlived spirit, still venerable but set at naught by Christ and no longer holding any truth for the present. Reformed Judaism is of even less religious significance. It is neither Judaism nor Christianity, but a pitiful remnant of the age of enlightenment. Okay, over in the right column, middle of the first full paragraph. It is true
Israel had an enlightened economic legislation, social forms of property ownership, the prohibition of usury, and the greatest charity toward the poor. But we have only to mention these things to realize the fearful chasm between the Old Testament and modern Jewry. Down to the next paragraph, the bottom of the next paragraph. Alas, the Jews should not be told such foolishness, for it is their ominous fate that, having failed Christ, they have lost their divine course, have abandoned their sublime mission. Confronted with the Lord's sharp-edged alternative, thou cannot serve both God and mammon. They now worship the idol of gold, having forsaken the path of God. That's kind of right out of Marx. That's what he said. And then over on the next page, 342, the second paragraph from the left. The question is, what shall be done? We believe that Jews and Christians must try to establish a proper relationship with each other. There is no other way. Hatred of the Jews is already flaring up here and there, and this is repugnant to the Gospels. If modern Jewry continues to use the power of capital and the power of the press to bring misfortune to the nation, a final catastrophe is unavoidable. Israel must renounce its ambition to become the master of Germany. And this is echoed by Hitler, and we'll read it, I think, in our Nazism unit, where Hitler gave a speech before he started the war, and said, if international Jewry should succeed at plunging the nations into war again, the result will not be the Bolshevization of the whatever, but the destruction of the Jewish race in Europe. Hitler said that. And this is exactly what he says here. So they're building, as someone said, Adam said, I think this is the logical conclusion of where all this goes. Okay, and let's look at the last paragraph on the right. Either we succeed in this and Germany will rise again, or the cancer from which we suffer will spread further. In that event, our whole future is threatened, and the German spirit will become Judaized. The German economy will become impoverished. These are our slogans. A return to a Germanic rule in law and business, a return to the Christian faith. May every man do his duty and God will help us. All right, now we're going to skip von Treitschke, although he's very important. His essay is long, and I just want to, if you flip to page 346, just in the note here gives a good summary of him on the left side, page 346. Note number 1 in the middle of the column. Treitschke held that the core of the problem was Jewry's contradictory desire to preserve its national identity while simultaneously claiming the right to participate fully in the national life of Germany. Accordingly, he urged the Jews to rid themselves of their frivolous arrogance and to pursue a genuine and rapid assimilation into German culture and society. So this guy, he's a prominent academic of his time. And Treitschke's work is important for kind of mainstreaming all of this stuff. And he's like I think more of an Enlightenment guy. Bringing this thing about the Jews, you can't be a nation and German at the same time. And he says, and it might be, his famous quotation is, the Jews are our misfortune. Jews are our misfortune. All right, the last thing that I want to read is on page 350, and then we'll finish up. The last thing, Theodor Fritsch.
Oh my God.
The racist decalogue. Okay, so it really is quite amazing. You think about in our culture, to say things like this just outright. And almost until right now, because but up until this moment, to say things outright, it's like you cannot say it. But this Fuentes guy, he's saying it. he used the phrase, he said something about it's organized Jewry. Organized, like that's out of the 19th century German lexicon. Yeah, who says that? Nobody has said that phrase until, now. So like certain taboos and so forth have been broken in America, right? But so here at 1883, you have this guy publishing The Racist's Decalogue. 1, be proud of being a German and strive earnestly and steadily to practice the inherited virtues of our people, courage, faithfulness, and veracity, and to inspire and develop these in thy children. 2, thou shalt know that thou, together with all thy fellow Germans, regardless of faith or creed, hast a common, implacable foe. His name is Jew. 3, thou shalt keep thy blood pure. Consider it a crime to soil the noble Aryan breed of thy people by mingling it with the Jewish breed. So this is a characterization. The Jews are almost like a different species or something. For thou must know that Jewish blood is everlasting, putting the Jewish stamp on body and soul unto the farthest generations. 4, thou shalt be helpful to thy fellow German, and further him in all matters not counter to the German conscience, the more so if he be pressed by the Jew. Thou shalt at once take into court any offense or crime committed by the Jew in deed, word, or letter that comes to thy knowledge, lest the Jew abuse the laws of our country with impunity. And that ties into the loyalty, the dual loyalty. It's like Jews are loyal to their own law, not to the law of the people. 5, thou shalt have no social intercourse with the Jew. Avoid all contact and community with the Jew, and keep him away from thyself and thy family, especially thy daughters, lest thy suffer injury of body and soul. 6, thou shalt have no business relations with the Jews. Never choose a Jew as a business partner, nor borrow nor buy from him, and keep your wife too from doing so. Thou shalt sell nothing to him, nor use him as an agent in thy transactions, and thou mayst remain free and not become slave unto the Jew, nor help to increase his money, which is the power by which he enslaves our people. 7, thou shalt drive the Jew from thy own breast, and take no example from Jewish tricks and Jewish wiles, for thou shalt never match the Jew in trickery, but forfeit thy honor and earn the contempt of thy fellow Germans and the punishment of the courts. 8, thou shalt not entrust thy rights to a Jewish lawyer, nor thy body to a Jewish physician, nor thy children to a Jewish teacher, lest thy honor, body, and soul suffer harm. 9, thou shalt not lend ear nor give credence to the Jew. Keep away all Jewish writings from thy German home and hearth, lest their lingering poison may unnerve and corrupt thyself and thy family. 10, thou shalt use no violence against the Jews, because it is unworthy of thee and against the law. But if a Jew attack thee, ward off his Semitic insolence with German wrath. Okay, what are our, Phil?
The difference between Germany and the United States is that Germany is homogeneous. The United States is not homogeneous.
Right.
So it's not only the Jew, there's the black, there's the Italian,
Yeah.
there's the German, there's the English.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that because of that difference, that we will not suffer.
Yeah, it's definitely a different context. And here, I mean, the idea, we'll see this develop much, more explicitly in Nazism, is the idea of the German nation as this, like biological organism, that has its own internal cohesion and integrity that is under attack by a foreign biological substance. So the purity of the German nation, the purity of the blood, et cetera, is very important to these thinkers. And I don't, for all the reasons you say, I don't think these ideas are translatable into the American context directly.
Now the name of the Nazi Party, National Socialism, makes sense.
Exactly, yeah, so we're gonna learn about that when we get to
You
the,
know, that
yeah.
people say, oh, it's a contradiction. It's not.
It's not.
Against the
No,
what
no,
we
no.
read of the socialists and what we read of these people.
Exactly.
It's a reasonable comment.
Right, the body, so, okay, so think about an organism, like in a living, organism, every element of the organism is like interdependent on the others, right? It all works together. I mean, we say, so sad to, bring it in, but just for illustration, in our morning liturgy, we have the Asher Yatzar prayer, which blesses God for, making the wondrous making of my body. If one thing should be wrongly opened or closed, I would not be able to stand before God. There's like this interconnectedness of the organism internally. And that's the idea that these thinkers are building and that Nazism brings to full expression. So the idea of socialism, it's like all Germans are like biologically interconnected and must be guarded against any external force that would break down the organism. Okay, Harriet.
All these latent thinkers were all in the 1800s.
Yes.
Mass immigration of the Jews to the United States. But the people that didn't emigrate, and mostly the large part at that point, they were the peasants and Eastern Europeans. But how did they fight back? Were there any writings where?
Yeah, one of our readings for today, the book by Sanford Reagans, is all about Jewish responses to anti-Semitism in this period. I don't remember his points off the top, but yeah, of course the Jews did react to it. Okay, last comment from, I can't tell it, Eric, and then we're gonna end.
Just one question. Having studied this and ruminated upon it, when you hear people discussing other groups and sort of reacting jealously to how they are succeeding in our society, or in Great Neck particularly, does it make you think it's very similar, or do you see like more the differences between how those groups are being responded to versus Jews? Like, for instance, I don't know anybody who I have spoken to who used to live in Great Neck who hasn't, the very first thing they say is Great Neck is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, what they're saying, I know, is that there's a lot of Chinese people now living in Great Neck. Initially, it was like the Persians are in Great Neck versus, what Great Neck used to be like. When you hear people talking that way, does it make you feel like it's very similar, or do you feel like?
I mean, there's an impulse there, which I think is innate in human beings, to, for like to be with like. And there are reactions against it when that is not the case, and we respond to people like, their culture is weird, they're not like us, they do things, they're obnoxious, or they stink, or whatever the case may be. Yeah, I mean, these impulses are definitely here. This is taken to a very extreme, very, very extreme, right? But yeah, it's benign in everybody to one degree or another. But I think I think these questions, I think especially the questions of nationalism, nationhood, that's a very much a live issue in our world today and in our country. I think I think universalism versus particularism in terms of how society should be constructed is very much a live issue. And I think this question of, where we started with the image of the demonstrators at Union Station in DC, is that this question of being, the Jews' position between right and left, and the question of like, where do we belong? Where do we belong? Because again, you have some people saying the Jews do not belong here. They are not of our people. They're part of something else. And then you have others saying the Jews are not a people in their own right, and they don't have a right to their own place. So the sum of its parts is the Jews really belong nowhere. In some respects, the Ahasuerus, the wandering Jew, is a live character in the world today. All right, so we're going to stop here and pick up next week with some more. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Oh, before you leave, please, one thing that I want to ask you, of you, doesn't have to be done right now, but if you are finding this class to be informative, meaningful experience, I would like to ask you to take your cell phone, just record yourself saying something about why you like the class or what your experience has been, and email it to me. I want to put together a little kind of promotional video for what we do here at Temple Beth-El and our learning experiences. And so your help, to have testimonials like that would be amazing. Just, if you would, record yourself on landscape, just, 10 seconds or whatever. Email it to me. That would be amazing. Thank you. Horizontal. On the phone. Horizontal. Yeah.